It's time for Political Buzz, the television forum to discuss politics and issues of interest for all of Western New York. Now, from the WBBZ television studio at the Eastern Hills Mall, this is Political Buzz.
Hello, everybody. John DeShula with you here. Welcome to the show on our hometown television station. Question, what do conservatives need to bring more candidates and their philosophies from the right back into power, particularly in a state like New York? Is the right conflicted with people who Carl Palladino called rhinos, which means Republicans in name only, versus conservatives who hold strongly to their beliefs? Do they need to reflect on the past and those who rose to power to find the answer for their future? That's what the party here in Western New York did recently at a major fundraising event. Hundreds of prominent business and political leaders gathered together recently inside the banquet room at the Diamond Hawk Country Club to rally for the Conservative Party and honor former Buffalo Bills quarterback and United States Congressman, the late Jack Kemp. Kemp played for our hometown team from 1962 until 1969, leading the team to 2 AFL championships in 1964 and 1965. He was elected to represent Western New York in the House of Representatives and served from 1971 until 1989. Was a friend and advisor to President Ronald Reagan, tried but failed to become a candidate for president in 1988, but later went on to serve as Secretary of Housing and Urban Development in the Bush administration. During his tenure in Washington, he championed the causes for our region and never forgot the meaning Western New York had for he and his family. Conservative leader Ralph Lurigo and event organizer Russ Gugino welcomed guests as diverse as Ellicott Development President and school board member Carl Palladino to Democratic strategist and attorney Steve Pidgeon, regular contributors to Political Buzz here on WBBZ-TV. Erie County Clerk Chris Jacobs was in attendance with Sheriff Timothy Howard, prominent area judges like Barbara Howe and Patrick Carney, and even political analyst Bob Davis and his wife Kelly. Former Buffalo Bill Booker Edgerson worked the room and told the crowd what Jack Kemp was like as a leader for the team.
He was a friend. He counseled a lot of us guys because he had the knowledge of the politics, he had the knowledge of business, and he understood what was going on in society, which a lot of us guys, we played the game of football and really wasn't aware of what was going on out in society, and he made us aware of that. So that's the leadership that Jack Kemp brought to the football team.
Former advisor to President Nixon, author and political insider with ties to Buffalo, Roger Stone.
Jack Kemp could have been a United States Senator. Jack Kemp could have been governor of the state of New York. Jack Kemp could have been president of the United States. But for Jack Kemp, ideas and the cause was greater than his personal ambition.
Food Bank of Western New York advocate Mike Bellani remembered a meeting he had with Kemp to push for an inner-city baseball team when he was with the Bisons and made a very bold public declaration.
I've been a lifelong Republican, but because of these guys and what they've told me tonight, Mr. Chairman, I'll take the application and switch over to your party.
Guest speaker Larry Kudlow, former Office of Management and Budget Advisor with President Reagan, who is now an outspoken radio and television host on CNBC, shared a memory about his interactions with his friend, Jack Kemp.
All the time, the reason I say this is all the time we were engaged, talking, dinner at the Kemp's house in Bethesda, Maryland, and phone calls. He was a great phone caller, and he would call sometimes to say something really nice and great, and he would call sometimes to just scream at you. All right? That's cool. Just say, 25 years, 30-year friendship, and he would call me right up into the end and say, why did you say this? Why didn't you say that? And it was just terrific, terrific stuff.
And the one message that resonated throughout the night, where are the conservatives and Republicans going to find those lions to lead their party? Political strategist Michael Caputo shared his memories about that and coming of age with Jack Kemp.
Well, Jack was my first internship when I got out of the Army when I was at UB. And I went from the internship here in the local office to becoming a writer for his presidential campaign. And my whole life changed. I mean, Jack Kemp and Russ Gugino, they changed my life, you know.
You talk about lions. I thought it was an interesting analogy, and Larry Kudlow from CNBC said the same thing. Explain that thought, and where are we as a party with it?
Well, when a society is in trouble, it's the lions that get us out of the trouble. It's the lions that lead us to safety. And we had so many lions in the 80s, Jack Kemp, Ronald Reagan, many more. And those of us who are knowledgeable about politics right now, we look around and we just don't see any lions. I can't name one. And Kudlow himself said he couldn't think of any. And we're in real trouble as a society if we don't find people to lead us out of this mess, and those are the lions we need to look for.
Well, and you point to the international situation with Crimea and Putin as really being a prime example of now is when we need that, and that being just a prime example.
Well, all my friends in Russia say that Putin is their lion, and he truly is. I mean, I spent 10 years there, and I know Putin. He's been in my home in Russia, and he was waiting for a weak America, and he's got it. And when there's a lion on the other side, and there's just sheep on this side, we're in real trouble.
Mr. Kudlow said something interesting about energy independence, and if we were to give some energy to Crimea, that would weaken the Russians. And in many respects, we as a nation would probably benefit if we took advantage of energy independence.
Well, my biggest client in Russia when I was there was Gazprom, the natural gas giant. And they were always passing, money on to the politicians. They say that Vladimir Putin makes $100 million a year off of natural gas personally. And now that is down to just a couple million, because America is now the leading energy producer in the world. If we were one of the leading energy exporters in the world, Russia would be our vassal. And right now, we can't even frack in New York State. We can't harvest all the natural gas we have on federal lands with a safe process, a reasonable process. And until we do that, until we can export it to Europe, we're going to be a vassal of Russia.
One more question. We talk about, in the Republican Party and now the Conservative Party. This tonight seemed to me like a bit of a rally of sorts. And Mr. Kudlow said, and others may have said, where are these lions? Where are these people? Why is the Republican Party and the Conservative Party either so disconnected or doesn't have the right individuals in running for office or leading the group? What's your take on that overall?
It's the candidate selection process. We don't cast our net widely enough. I mean, those of us who are interested in getting Donald Trump to run for governor, we were looking for a lion to lead us out of this mess we have in New York State, a lion who could defeat Andrew Cuomo. We unfortunately aren't going to get him to run, but the whole entire party apparatus is looking across the United States, looking for a lion. We just don't have any lions in our party right now. I think we are going to find them. I don't think we know them right now, but I think we're going to find them and introduce them. We're going to be introducing them in the next couple of years.
And one more quick story about Jack Kemp that you can share, which I thought was really fascinating when he refused to ride in the bulletproof van in Nicaragua.
Well, I'll tell you, we were going from Honduras on the border of Nicaragua to El Salvador to Costa Rica to meet with the presidents of each of those nations to try to convince them not to sign a peace pact that would install communists in the government in all three nations. And on the way to El Salvador, there was real trouble. I mean, the communist rebels had declared a transportation strike, and anybody who was caught driving would be shot and killed. And unfortunately, we had to go through rebel-held territory from the airport to the capital city. And when I told Mr. Kemp, well, the stoppage had been called off for our visit, luckily. And I told Mr. Kemp that just in case we had gotten him a bulletproof van, and then the other 30 people on the plane were going to have to go in this rickety old Salvadoran bus. He absolutely refused to do it. Absolutely refused. I kept pushing him. Because I knew it was my job to keep him safe. He got so mad at me, he sent me to the back of the plane. And when we got down on the ground, of course, he got on the rickety old bus with the other people, and I ended up the only person with the armed guards in the bulletproof van.
There you go, another definition of a real lion.
Absolutely, absolutely. He was fearless, and I'm sure one day we'll find someone as fearless as he is.
It was certainly a big event, and Democratic strategist Steve Pigeon was there. Steve's going to respond to that interview with Michael Caputo. And I'd liken it, Steve, to something where keep your friends close but your enemies closer. Because there are a lot of Republican and conservatives. Hold those thoughts. We're going to be back with Steve Pigeon right after this break. All right, welcome back to Political Buzz. John DeShula here with you. Welcome, Steve Pigeon.
Thank you,
Attorney
John.
from Underberg and Kessler, and of course, Democratic strategist. Now, you and I were at that event,
yes.
And it was pretty interesting. But you had some interesting reaction during that previous segment with Michael Caputo, particularly about Russia.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the American right is trying to act as if this has happened because somehow the United States is weak and Russia has grown stronger. The reason this is happening is because Russia, which is now just a regional power, it's not a world superpower, is very insecure, and it has only one thing: oil and natural gas. And as time goes by, as not only the United States increases its capacity, which if we were fracking in New York right now, that wouldn't be going over to Europe. We are 5 to 10 years away from having a distribution ability to supply Europe to the point where they don't need Russia as much. But he has a commodity, and over time, that is going away. Technology is bringing that away. Other countries producing is bringing that away. Alternative energies is bringing that away. Now is the time where, because his economy is so weak and they're dependent on one thing, they sell energy, I think, to rally his own people, which his popularity ratings are through the roof in Russia right now, because he annexed Crimea. It's really a regional, local thing. And people forget that, Russia sees these old parts of their country that were parts of the Soviet Union talking about joining the EU and then joining NATO. How would we feel if somehow or another Texas had become its own country and was joining some group allied with the former Soviet Union? So it's local. In the Crimea, historically, Crimea has been part of Russia. It was part of the Russian Federation during the Soviet Union. Nikita Khrushchev, who was Ukrainian, moved it and just declared it as being part of the Ukrainian Federation of states within the Soviet Union. So a lot of people in Crimea felt historically, ethnically, culturally, that they were part of Russia. I think it was most people in Crimea want to be in Russia. So I think a lot of this had to do with domestic consumption. In reality, Ronald Reagan wouldn't, John Kennedy, the big Cold Warriors, Richard Nixon, wouldn't put boots on the ground in Crimea against the Russians, because it's their sphere of influence, it's their part of the world, and they're ethnic, cultural Russians in Crimea. Many people there have dual citizenship. Now, I believe that that move was made for internal consumption. That move was made because, remember, you had Yanukovych, who was a democratically elected president, who signs a trade treaty with Russia when instead of the European Union, which had been on track for years, there becomes a revolt in the Ukraine, where the Ukraine government, one of the most corrupt in the world, was not taking care of its people. And you have this uprising similar to what happened in the Orange Revolution in '94 that is very popular in the western end of that country. Not so much in the eastern end, especially in Crimea, which has those historic ties to Russia. So again, the Kennedys and the Reagans of the world wouldn't have done anything differently than what Obama's doing, which is saying, Russia, if you're not going to appreciate and recognize world borders, you're going to pay an economic price for it. We're going to have sanctions against you. You're going to isolate yourself from the rest of the world, hurt your economy more, which seems to be a price Putin's willing to pay for internal consumption. I think he'll run into problems if he tries to go into eastern or southern Ukraine. My guess is he rattles sabers, backs off, and says, I'm keeping Crimea, because he cannot economically afford to go into and raise the stakes to that point. So Mike acting as if somehow Obama's weakness has led to Putin being the strongman. Putin is dealing out of insecurity, weakness, and a bad hand. He's got a horrible economy, and based upon energy and oil that we know within 10 years won't have the hegemony in Eastern and Western Europe that it has now. So he's a lot of this is show on the behalf of Putin. But having said that, I enjoy, I'm very close to Roger Stone and worked with Mike, close with Mike, and we worked together overseas in Eastern Europe. Had a lot of respect for Jack Kemp, who was a different. I don't think there'd be a room for Jack Kemp in today's Republican Party.
It played when you think about like Booker Edgerson, who was there, and Frank Messiah from the NAACP. Jack played almost like a liberal in some respects.
Well, they would consider him a liberal in today's Republican Party.
But still, with the Kemp-Roth Act and his thoughts on taxes. And I did read in the Los Angeles Times, NATO is expressing that those sanctions should be upheld. It was terrible, unfortunately, that there were lives lost in that issue. Let's switch gears back to the United States. And President Barack Obama sort of celebrating the fact that 7 million people have signed up for the affordable health care despite the issues with the web. And some people, some individuals even, in our sphere here, have picked up a health care plan that's less with more to it than what they were previously paying.
Well,
so there have been some success stories.
First off, this is, they've enrolled more than they ever even said their goal was, in spite of that bad launch. And I would just say that as people understand what the act will do for them, more and more people are going to understand that it's bringing affordable health care to average citizens and many people who didn't have the insurance. Now, if the Republicans would have spent as much time, nothing's perfect when you first do it, and kinks have to be worked out. If the Republicans would have tried to work to make the act better and to try to amend the act to improve things, rather than just try to destroy it from its crib, from the cradle, then I think we'd be that much further ahead. But they never tried to add anything or say, yes, we have a problem with people not uninsured. We have a problem with too expensive health care. We might not like this bill. Can we change it this way? They just wanted to use it as a political football and to try to defund it and to try, 50 votes to get rid of it, closing the government down and all the games they played. If they were truly a partner in government, we'd see things going further. But let me just say one thing about...
But 2 minutes left here, Steve.
About the Lions. I'm sorry for going on.
That's all
right. We heard this about the Lions a lot. I would dare say in 20 years, people will look back and say, where's a lion like Barack Obama? Because, first off, in hindsight, people look bigger than they did at the time. And secondly, we're not made, our 24/7 universe, our tabloid news, we're not made to allow lions. I remember back when Reagan was first running and they said, why is this washed up movie actor running? Where are the lions like Franklin Roosevelt? Well, if Franklin Roosevelt were to be looked at by a tabloid with his affairs and his wife's affairs, he probably never would have been elected president. So I think a lot of it is hindsight. There may be lions amongst us and we don't even realize it.
Interesting point. And when we come back, one of those lions who is in Western New York, Carl Palladino, is going to join us on the phone, talk about a major rally that was in Albany with respect to trying to repeal the New York SAFE Act. And Steve has some thoughts on that in addition to what Carl can tell us when we come back right after this. Welcome back to Political Buzz, Sunday at 11 a.m., Thursday at 9 a.m. WBBZ.TV is our website. Remember to like us on Facebook. Follow the conversation at WBBZ on Twitter. And I know an individual who has been posting pictures on Facebook is our friend Carl Palladino, president of Ellicott Development. He's on the line with us. Carl, you were at the big gun rally in Albany earlier this week, and you claimed thousands of people were there. In fact, you said it felt like 10,000 people. What was it like?
No, I think it was about 5,000 people. It was a really a powerful event. In fact, they had moved us off of the grass of the Capitol building because Andrew claimed that was his grass. Okay, so they moved us onto the southerly part of the plaza there, and actually the crowd was able to stand up on these steps so everybody could see. And then we had a bandstand and the band and the speakers spoke from there, and it was really a great, friendly and very determined crowd who wanted to voice their angst at Andrew Cuomo and Dean Skelos, our sellout Republican. And they did, and we had some speakers. We had our two candidates for the Republican nomination for governor, Astorino and Donald Trump. We're still trying to get Trump agreeable to a draft, but in any event, Astorino spoke very well. He's a good guy. I would hope that he can raise the money, and I encourage people to help support his candidacy if we can't get Mr. Trump in there.
I know we have just about 2 minutes left here, Carl, and we saw some photos there of Sheriff Tim Howard there also with you.
Tim was a riot. He was a riot. He had a number of good points he brought up, and he had a couple of good jokes, and He's a good guy. He's just a tremendous fighter and fighter for the individual rights of the American people. There's no justification for this governor having taken off after this SAFE Act. He did it. He did it in the middle of the night. He shoved it through, and just that on its face was enough to certainly harm the individual Second Amendment rights of the people.
I know that you and your group want to try to repeal the SAFE Act, and is
I don't
that going
know
to
about,
happen, do you think, or is this
you know,
just
with
so
guys
far
like
gone?
Sheldon Silver and Andrew Cuomo hanging around there, it's certainly not going to get repealed until we get them out of office, and that's what we're hoping. And I explained to everyone how important it was that they get all their friends and family registered and get them out to vote. I think there were 4 million votes in the last election in 2010. There's 6 million gun owners. I mean, I think without question that those people should get out there and get their families registered and make sure everyone gets out to vote in this current election, because it's time to turn the tide. It's time to change things. Upstate New York is the forgotten child. We saw it in the budget process. The Republicans sold us out again. They let Andrew Cuomo give us a budget that directed huge disproportionate monies into the city of New York, where his election base is, and not to upstate and Long Island, who certainly deserved a better share of the monies that were being given out, both in education and other programs.
Carl, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the Siena poll that now says 60+% are actually in favor of the SAFE Act. And,
well,
are you just looking at a vocal minority with your group?
When you read these polls, you have to understand how much of a sampling they took from each type of group. And that's how Siena messes things up, because they do these wild assumptions which favor Andrew Cuomo. Why? Because Andrew Cuomo takes good care of them and buys a lot of polls from them every year. So don't rely upon those polls.
I think it's more than just
talk to the people
Siena,
on the
Carl.
streets. Yeah.
I think it's more than just
Siena. He
Siena.
does the same thing with Quinnipiac.
Well,
it'd be nice to get a non-biased pollster at some point.
The polling has showed that there's a significant minority who's very upset about the SAFE Act, but that the majority of New York voters support it and support rational gun regulation.
And
I also thought Buffalo did pretty well with the $1 billion in the budget. I think Buffalo did pretty good with the $1 billion in the budget, Carl.
Well, they only gave $1 billion because they wanted him to do better here, knowing that I was here.
Again, another on-time budget.
And by the way, the $1 billion, a lot of that $1 billion is smoke and mirrors. He's giving gifts to his friends and family club in Western New York. That's all it's about, Steve, and you know that.
Well, Carl, I'll tell you what, we're going to leave it right here. Thank you for giving us the update on the rally. And Steve mentioned we have to get you gentlemen together in our studio again, because we haven't done that in quite some time. So hopefully we'll look forward to scheduling that in the next coming weeks.
Well, that'd be great. Thanks, John.
All right. Thanks, Carl.
Carl, thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
All right, Steve, that'll do it for this edition.
All right, another good show.
All right,
I enjoyed it.
Covered it all from the Ukraine to the conservatives and the gun rally in Albany. That's what we do here every Thursday at 9 a.m., Sunday at 11 a.m. on our hometown television station, and we hope to do another show with Steve and Carl together again. We'll see you next time right here.